What's going on, guys? I'm back with another video. This one took a while and actually took a bit of research to do, but still, here it is. Bridget matchup guide. You guys asked for it, so here it is. Bridget matchup guide versus every character in Guilty Gear Strive as of Johnny's release. Let's get right into it. Like and subscribe. With this and many other Bridget matchups, 5P is our go-to round start, as it'll beat out slower hitboxes on many other characters. Soul's only real option to beat it is to go for a super risky round start Vortex. Vortex is also just a big factor in this matchup in general, as it beats out every single button you have pretty much, but it'll lose to 2K or 2D. So if you see it coming, you can defend using those. Use kicks when defending against his stagger pressure, as they're faster than your punch buttons and also more rewarding. 5K is longer than 2K, will hit the gap between // and also gives you a knockdown if you hit. DP is also good, as it'll also beat delay 5H. Thankfully, in neutral, this is a matchup where you can force Soul to approach. Use 2-1-4S and let the yo-yo do the work. Also, against him or other DP characters, you'll want to do more safe jumps than not, especially if they have meter. If you don't do this, you might have the situation reversed on you, so you want to get in the habit of doing safe jumps. Once they're conditioned to block these, then you can start doing mind games and disrespect them a little bit. So play around their resources and make sure you aren't being careless when doing offense on these characters. Against Kai or other characters with low-profile moves, you largely want to end your block swings using Break. Using Stop and Dash runs you the risk of having them use their low-profile moves on you to shrink under them. Don't whiff a lot of buttons in neutral against it, as this Fireball will eat up your hurt boxes and also make you take unnecessary damage. You will need to play footsies and properly approach him. When he has 50 meter, the floor is lava, as Thunder will just ruin your entire day. You can stop it using 2P, 2K, or 2S. But really, you're just playing standard Shadow neutral against him. You can counter-poke him on the ground using your bigger normals, jump his fireballs, and largely, you are the approacher in this matchup. When you're in shock, use 5K to beat Foudre Arc when he tries going for plus frames. Also, if characters like Kai like to set up set play tools at full screen, you can just throw 2-1-4S. This evens the playing field a little bit, where now you both have your strongest neutral tools on screen. What a lot of Kai players will do is burst, use 236H, and then they will try to run at you. So this is the perfect time to set up your yo-yo and then start your gameplay. Use light buttons to challenge after blocking S-Dolphin, and they will really struggle to deal with them. If they backdash after S-Dolphin, you can probably use 5H to catch it. Light buttons will also stop H-Dolphin in its tracks if you see it coming. Get used to using 2H in neutral, as it stops vertical dolphins and also maze jumping. 6P can sometimes lose to JS. Round start, though, sucks, as our 2S or 5H beats almost all of your options. What I like to do is just back up a little bit and use something like a // to whiff punish instead. This will be another recurring theme against Chipp or other speedy characters, but you'll want to use 5P, 2P, and // as pokes most of the time to maintain distance. 5H is big and laggy, and thanks to his speed you'll be getting whiff punished a lot if you're not careful. So be very cautious when throwing buttons against him. And remember, you have a DP, so if Chipp wants to go into his overhead rekka or delay his low one, this leaves a gap you can escape from. To punish his command grab, just do this. Also again, 5P is probably your best round start. In this matchup, 6P is probably your best friend. Millia will struggle to challenge you on the floor, so Millia will usually be taking to the skies instead, doing things like Capel into JH. You can cleanly beat the JH with the 6P. And if you judge the spacing correctly, 2H works too. And once you get in on them, Millia's defensive options are pretty bad and stubby, so you just run a train on her. But similar to Chipp, don't leave yourself open, as she can close the distance very fast. And be sure to know your defensive options against her, like fuzzy jumping after a throw. When performing offense on her in the corner, usually the number one option you'll need to cover is jump out. You can do this via your 2H, or you can just back up and give a little space, so that way you can catch her triple jumping with Capel. And then when on defense, be sure to FD her out, as just like yours, her close slash is 2 hits. Deflect Shield also works pretty well too. Do not get hit. Okay, what do I mean by that? If Nago opens you up, he murders you in 2 touches, so you need to be very proactive about controlling the neutral. 5P is a very good round start versus him, but it loses to 6P or potentially a delay button. You can probably just backdash and create distance. When at a far distance, know Nago's options based on his blood bar, as when it's close to full, his ability to approach is incredibly limited, and they'll likely be jumping, so just anti-air him. Otherwise, he's a sitting duck when at full blood, so take advantage of that. 2-1-4S is basically his worst nightmare if he's lacking in resources. Otherwise, it's about knowing the other player and avoiding the options as they come by. Carefulness is key in this matchup. This matchup sucks. Jako is another character that will run a train on you if you're not careful. The key is to know your options to deal with her minions when they're on screen. 6P is universally pretty good. If they're carelessly just throwing them at you from full screen, what I like to do is 6P, then use Kickstart to close the gap, and if they're not reacting, you just get in. But otherwise, poke the minions from a distance with your big normals and try to get in, as this is a matchup where you need to be the aggressor in neutral. Another thing is, when playing footsies with her, Jako has very good low profiles. Your 2P or your 2K will catch her throwing 2K or 2D. I personally prefer 2P as my footsie button, as it also will often beat 5H, which they also like to throw out to approach with. So deal with the minions and don't fall for her low profiles, and it will generally make the matchup easier. And again, you have a DP, so if the Jako player is mindlessly doing this has a gap if you're quick enough. So there are two very important things in this matchup. One is that you have to RPS with him when he's doing offense. What I mean by that is that when Faust is doing offense, one of his big weaknesses is that he does not have good block string numbers. So if you see a heavy or command normal in his string, he has to do a special cancel. And his options are not great. He basically has to do one of three things. He can do mix, which leaves a tiny gap, but will catch you if you're doing a slower button like a 5H. But you can just block this and punish it. Or he can try and throw up an item, but you can usually destroy this with the 5H. He can also do Scalpel, but this will lose the 6P if you're able to react to it. So basically, once you know the Faust player's options, you only need to give them as much respect as they earn. The other hard part is knowing how to navigate neutral against them. Number one, his crouch shrinks basically every single button you have except for 2S. But his 2H is longer, so yeah, that's fun. And if you come to rely on your bigger buttons too much, he also has J2K. So neutral is hard, but both of these things have answers to them. For instance, you can always just jump over his 2H and get in. Or if he's doing a lot of jumping, you have top-class anti-airs. Oh, also, a lot of Faust players love to do this, but then you can do this. So it's not hopeless, you just can't autopilot in neutral. So again, make sure you adapt to the Faust player's options and get around them. And if they're just mindlessly throwing items, just do this. I fucking hate this matchup. Navigating neutral is a pain in the ass. While you should theoretically be able to approach easy using Kickstart by heart, he has 5P and 2H to smoke this in its tracks. So ultimately, you've got to work hard. Just remember, you are not a dash blocking type character like Leo, but unlike Leo, you have big buttons. So basically, once you get him to a mid-range like this, you can challenge his normals with some of your own. The top normal you'll be using is 5H. If you hit, this allows you to close the gap and basically just start offense from there. And of course, Axel can't cover the ground in the air at the same time. JS is very annoying because of your own hurt boxes, but again, know your options. If they're doing it recklessly, you can just 6P it for instance. Or, another underused option is actually 236H that snipes them right out of the air. Rainwater is also another big factor in this matchup as it'll snag your hurt boxes. If you see it though, you can JH this and get a combo. So Axel has a ton of advantages in neutral alone, but if you know how to deal with every one of them, you can kind of RPS with them, and then once you get the hit, your offense is so strong that Axel is going to have issues getting you back out. So labbing is super important against this character. This matchup has changed significantly since last patch, and that's mainly because of White Wild Assault. If you're getting careless by just throwing out buttons in neutral, White Wild Assault will absolutely gut you. To deal with this, make sure you're never at close range with Potemkin, at least not on his terms. Now, Potemkin has other approach options like Mega Fist, but if you block it at close range, it's minus enough for you to just outright punish it with your 2K and start 50-50s. Call him out and you can 2H it and Potemkin just explodes. 214S is also extremely useful in neutral. He can flick it, but if you just hit him during those startup frames, he's not going to be able to do this. Another problem you might have in neutral is because your combo damage is admittedly pretty low, at some point or another, he's going to get meter. This changes the dynamic of neutral, but again, you still have options. For instance, if they like to do Hammerfall at you with meter, you can just 2S it, as this is a multi-hitting move. And if they try to do Gigantor, just don't be stupid, because if you jump over it and they have half meter, getting around Garuda pressure is also tough, but still. You can always jump it between the first and second one, or use the Flex Shield to push him back out. And then make your openings count, as Potemkin's defense is subpar. The main defensive option you will need to call out is back Mega Fist.
Ramlethal Valentine.
This is another matchup that has changed significantly since last patch. Beforehand, it was difficult to play footsies with her thanks to her top tier run speed and also top tier range on her buttons. Like why is that a thing? But now she's much slower, but also got a new move. If Ramlethal just wants to use her big buttons, you can stay at a safe range and wait until she enters the threat range of your 5H. This is where the jousting basically begins, where if you react first, you could throw out your own 5H, and she gets counter hit trying to throw hers, or the other way around. She also has a good IAD and can jump over it, but you can see this coming in anti-air. Her no move though, Ondo, Indo, I don't know. It's another attack she has for both footsies and advantage thing. Seeing this coming, you may want to jump over it and try to punish her. Also, her dive kick leaves a gap that you can DP out of and is -2, so you can challenge it on block. Personally, I recommend 5k. So be sure to play a careful game of footsies with her in neutral so that way you can start pressure. Also, DP beats multiple records.
Giovanna.
Like the other fast characters, this matchup is all about carefulness. Throw out pokes with less committal, as things like your heavy buttons will get whiff punished in neutral. Thankfully, Giovanna does struggle against you at the long range. So 2 and 4S is a great neutral tool that forces her to make a decision, unless you just roll in and 50-50 her. When on the defense, use your 2P or your kick buttons to hit gaps and pressure and maybe create some distance. But be careful of the frame traps, or else you're going to say goodbye to your health bar. You can also DP the frame traps if she's at the right range. Giovanna's long-range poking tools really consist of her 2D and her spiral arrow kick. 2D will shrink under your buttons, but it can be dealt with by jumping or 2S'ing her to stuff it out. Spiral arrow will also be caught reliably with 6P, or you can use 5k and get more reward. Also, if they want to try using their meaty guard crush, you can always DP it, unless they have meter. In that case, they have the ability to fake you out and punish you. So be wary of that stuff. So like against Potemkin, you do have a lot of advantages in this matchup. Use your DP to get out of Goldlewis's many frame traps, for instance. Your punch buttons can also do the same if the gap in his pressure is big enough. His counter-poking game isn't too great, so you can throw out a lot of buttons against him, but be wary of his approach options like Run Up, Wild Assault, or JD. Because your 2H is so fat, you can likely beat the grounded and air approach with both of these options. 5P is excellent at round start against him, as you have time to block JD, and he'll struggle to find any other options to deal with it. Also, drone largely isn't an issue in this matchup, as 2 and 4S is a tool you largely force him to respect. You can also use Return to the Killing Machine to just get rid of it outright. Just don't get hit, or else you're gonna die. So, Bridget versus Bridget is all about knowing your own character and how to get around your own setups. For instance, you know that if the other player just wants to be using 2 and 4S all day, you need to make them block a hitbox so that way it returns and you can go back to playing footsies. Also, if they're jumping in a whole bunch with JD or Roger Dive, you have 2H as well. Be very wary of when the other Bridget player has meter to RC out of your safe jumps. Also, you know that a lot of Bridget players will use Kickstart My Heart to end or reset pressure, but you can probably interrupt this with a DP or a fast button to stop it. And of course, if you don't want to play the jousting game, 6P beats most of your pokes. So basically, winning the Ditto is largely going to come around how you adjust the other player and not your own character.
Zato 1.
Winning this matchup basically requires a 2-step game plan. Kill Eddie, and then kill Zato. You have many ways to do this, like for instance, if the Zato is doing Pierce, you can block the first hit and then 2k the second. This kills Eddie, and then you can get in there. You can also 6P the frog jump. A jumping 236H is also really good to stop Eddie from options like Drunkard Shade. Once Eddie is down, Zato will want to play more passive and try to run away from you. You can stop float with your amazing 2H, or you can push them into the corner if all they want to do is backdash all day. This is also a matchup you'll need to have a lot of experience with. I wouldn't be able to put all of Zato's Eddie setups into this one video, so yeah, just grab your local Zato player and try to play against them. Ino is another particular matchup that's going to require some specific responses from you. She has plenty of angles of attack in her stroke low profile, HCL to zone you out, and of course the hover dash. One very good tool against all of these is your 2H. If you're in range, you could potentially stop all 3 of these options if you time and space it correctly. Knowing your defensive options is good too, like for instance after blocking a dive kick, a good option is 6P. You can also dash under HCL to close the distance and also start pressure. Oh, also 2P is basically useless in this matchup because stroke beats it. Use 2K instead. Also, if she wants to do this mix-up, 5K beats it clean. But also, present the threat of DP on defense and the Eno player will be forced to play around it. Round start sucks because her 2S basically just deletes everything. I like to backdash or jump back instead so I can make space and then try to react to what the Eno player is doing instead. This is another matchup you'll want to practice, so get your local Eno player. See if you can play some games. Fuck this matchup! For this matchup, you'll need patience. A lot of it. Remember, you're not a character that gets a whole lot from dash blocking, so you'll need to wait for the Chaos player to give you an opportunity to close the gap. For instance, if they're doing this, eventually they will need to use focus. Seeing this, use Kickstart My Heart to quickly close the gap. Also, if they're doing pressure on you, remember that you have a DP to get out of certain setups. But beyond that, just make sure they understand the threat of your buttons at long range, so that way Chaos can't mindlessly just do Chaos things. Do not get cursed. It sucks. Also, against him or other zoners, Return to the Killing Machine or Stop and Dash Forward are both really good. So make sure you don't ignore your resources, and also just challenge them when you have the chance.
Bedman.
Turns out there's a big gap in between when he does these fireballs, so this allows you to just dash block and eventually close the distance. After that, the Bedman player will need to fight you at footsie range, which is right where you want him. A lot of them will try to take to the skies, and I mean, you know what to do. And then on the ground, you have bigger buttons than they do, so you can play at your preferred range and then just poke them from afar. If you get guard broken from about this range, you can probably hit a button and challenge them. An uncharged guard break is only +2, so only give them as much respect as they've earned.
Leo Whitebag.
This is kind of another one of those don't get hit matchups. If you lose neutral and Leo gets a good knockdown, you might just get hit by looping mix-ups and eventually killed. In neutral, it's a lot like Kai, where you don't want to be relying on 214S, as he's got the best fireball in the game. So really, you want to hang out at about footsie range and then try to block him out from there. You can halt his approach tools like 5K or 2D with things like your 2P or bigger normals. And then if he wants to use fireballs, just jump over them, forehead. And of course, know your options to defend. Grab the cross-ups, FD his back turn Ks, and then you'll be alright in this matchup. Just don't let him get a big opening. Particularly, what you want to do in this matchup is just play around spin. Your normals normally have a lot of whiff recovery, and if he catches the right one, you get bodied. Your light buttons play the mid-range against him really well, especially if you have meter. But be careful, as even these can be punished. You also win the full screen neutral pretty handily thanks to 214S. If he wants to throw butterfly, you can do this. And if he tries to spin it, you can just do this. Use and abuse your DP on defense, as his Fujin pressure tends to leave gaps. And then of course, you'll need to be careful of the reversal super when he has meter, since you can't safe jump it. Just mix up your pressure in different ways, and then you should be fine in this matchup. So, here's the thing about Baiken. You win neutral pretty well. Her run isn't that fast, and you can box her out with your big normals. Get careless though, and she can beat you from above or from below. Thankfully though, you do have 214S to just make her panic. If she just wants to hold stuff, you get free mix. Pretty cool, right? And also, you have a DP to beat things like the H Kabari follow-up. But, one factor that changes this almost completely is her parry. I touched on this in my Bridget guide, but basically you've got to understand and respect the threat of this move when you're doing offense. You can beat this by doing things like delaying a button on her wake-up. Do it just right and you'll beat it even if she has meter to Roman cancel. But this will lose to just her mashing instead. You can beat that option with a meaty though, so basically it's just both of you playing rock, paper, scissors on her wake-up. You need to make sure your 2D knockdowns are played properly and you don't want to get careless. Like if I wall break with super right here, I generally don't go for the safe jump because that just gets parried. Instead, you can do things like just back up and throw 214S and force her to make a choice. Baiken players also love to throw Tatami mats in neutral to mess with your hurt boxes, but you know what to do.
Testament.
Navigating neutral is going to require some discipline from you in this matchup, just like against Axel. But thankfully, again, they can't really cover the ground and the air at the same time. You can jump things like the S Grave Reaper or Testament's buttons. You can also potentially challenge these with your own buttons if you're in range. Another tactic is to instead throw this, and this will cover lots of Testament's options. Also, know when you can and can't disrespect Testament's offense. For instance, if Testament tries to throw a crow after an uncharged Grave Reaper, you can probably challenge it and it'll win. Generally, you can see this. These are true. These are not. Also, just play around their movement. If they'd like to do this in neutral, for instance, you can cover these using things like JH or 2H. And lastly, if you're stained, they still need to hit you. So use your big buttons to keep them out and make sure that they can't get the advantage. Sin is another one of those matchups where you don't want to let him in unless it's on your terms. Now you have the tools to do this. 214S forces him to act, you've got large buttons and all that good stuff, but one thing that makes you want to play a little more carefully is Elk Hunt. This will shrink under most of your pokes if you're not wary and ready for it. But still, 2S, 2P, or 2K will beat it cleanly if you're ready. Also, if the Sin player wants to do this, you can 2K the gap and then destroy him. Once you start applying this ground control, they'll probably want to start jumping in on you, but you've got easy answers to this, obviously. So once you start understanding the Sin player's movement and how they want to navigate neutral, take advantage of it and start punishing them for it. I'm probably not the biggest anti-Asuka specialist, but I'm still gonna try. What you don't want to do is just stand there and hold him throwing cubes all day, as actually, unlike other fireballs, you can actually beat them out using your own hitboxes. 236S in neutral will actually stop any cubes coming at you and give you a gap to run in and close the distance. You can also use your other buttons like far slash and 5H to clean up the screen from the smattering of cubes that's coming at you. Now, being on defense versus him kinda sucks, but if you see a gap in his pressure, you're probably able to challenge with one of your long buttons and stop him from just mindlessly throwing cubes at you. If you're really good as well, you can potentially do stuff like this. And then once you're in, go relentlessly, as he does not really have a reversal to get out without the proper spell. And then finally we get to John Guilty Gear. Like some of the other characters in the roster, this is basically just one big long-range jousting battle, at about this range. You have big buttons, but so does he, along with Mistfinder to poke you. But again, the ground and the floor cannot be covered by him at the same time, so you can jump his S Mistfinder and potentially go under the P version. One thing you do not want to do is let him set up cards for free. Something that Johnny players will do, for instance, is throwing out cards during pressure. If you don't react to this, they'll guard break you and get another turn. Always, always disrespect this. Another trick Johnny players like to do is this, but again, you can just jump it. Do so repeatedly though, and you'll just get anti-air. As long as you keep your tactics fresh against him, and you don't autopilot, this matchup should be okay for you. But if you don't mix up your options, you'll give him a lot of hits that he hasn't earned. Alright, that's every single matchup in Guilty Gear Strive as of Johnny's release. Let me know in the comments, guys, if this video helped you out at all, or if you just enjoyed the content. And trust me, more of this stuff is underway, so you definitely want to subscribe so you don't miss the next video. And whether you're a Bridget player or not, just like the video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment if you feel like it. See you guys in the next video. Take care.